Dexter Lawrence. The Bengals, they traded for him. He's under contract for the next 3 years. He's locked in. The latest contract development is really, really interesting with Jeffery Simmons. We're going to dive into that. But before we do, I thought it was pretty smart to share a clip of Dexter Lawrence. This is his mindset following his first offseason with the Bengals, going into a training camp and a huge, huge season for the veteran lineman.
Good. I mean, it's part of my role, to allow people to understand my knowledge of the game and to grow in that sense. So I think it just happens naturally, type of thing. So I'm just excited to keep growing with them and learning.
How much have you felt the energy of this city, of your teammates, since you got here a few months ago?
Well, I don't know if I felt it. They kind of said everybody else said it changed, but that's just how it was when I got here. So I'm embracing it and I enjoy it. It's just about winning and doing what you can to win and doing what you can to help everybody else around you be successful.
Now that you all are headed out, what do the next 5 weeks or so look like for you?
I'll be like a boxer, before they go till they fight. You got to put your head down and train. That's what it's about.
So the next 5 weeks for you are not in any way about rest or anything like that. It's about go time.
Yeah, it's go time. Yeah.
It's go time right now in June.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the process. That's something I've been doing since my rookie year. Around this time, before we get back, I just put my head down and I go to work and get ready for camp.
Dexter Lawrence, look, is a huge acquisition. There's no doubt. You make that trade, it completely revamped and changed kind of the way we view this team, the way we view this defense, their offseason moves, all came together, all made sense because they get Sexy Dexy in the building. And part of that was them signing him to a 1-year, $23 million contract extension, which is really team-friendly. And now he's under contract for 3 years, roughly $70 million, team-friendly when it comes to the top of the defensive tackle market, and even more so after what happened with Jeffery Simmons late last week. He agreed to a new deal that lands him at $105 million over the next 3 seasons. He's the highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL on a per-year basis at $35.3 million. Dexter Lawrence at $28 million. So you look at that and just the difference, and it's just a major, major difference. And I think Jeffery Simmons, maybe you would say he's a bit better than Dexter Lawrence overall, but he's not the big nose tackle commanding double teams, doesn't have the presence that Dexter has. The Bengals are getting a steal of a deal with Sexy Dexy.
No question about it. And looking at that graphic right there, the highest paid defensive tackles in football, I'm not taking anything away from Chris Jones. We all know how great Chris Jones is. But at this point in Chris Jones' career, I feel like Dexter Lawrence and Jeffery Simmons are in an echelon of their own when it comes to interior defensive linemen in the NFL. And I don't think that's necessarily too crazy to say. The conversation throughout the whole offseason, if the Bengals were going to add a big-time player, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins threw out Jeffery Simmons' name at Media Day for the Super Bowl on Radio Row earlier this year. So he's a name that people wanted here in Cincinnati as well and has been a dominant player in the league really since he got here. Now, the thing that I went back to look at was in 2025, last season, he was better than Dexter pretty much across the board in terms of PFF's analytics for interior defensive linemen. But going back to 24, 23, and 22, Dexter was better on the interior, not just run defense, but also pass rush and overall. Having all of that from a 350-plus pound nose tackle versus a 3-tech in Jeffery Simmons is a game changer on the interior. And the fact that these numbers are relatively similar between the two in sack production and things along those lines, Dexter doing it from a true nose position makes him the outlier that we've talked about since that trade was made. I could not have had this bigger reaction to this extension. I was sitting with our producer, Casey McAllister, when it happened, and our first reaction was, oh my gosh, the Dexter Lawrence trade just got better in June. And somehow it continues to get better throughout the offseason. We know who he is as a player, but everyone talks about the leadership, and now the contract looks even better.
Yeah, it does. Real quick, one quick note just to clarify. I said 1 year, $23 million. It's a 1 year, $28 million extension with the Bengals. Yes, just to be clear. So it's 28, not 23. Still, the 3 for 70, spot on versus Jeffery Simmons' 3 for 105. And that's where it really comes into play.
No, absolutely. This is the steal of all steals, it kind of feels like, for the Bengals. And because you look at the numbers, and especially with the double team rate, like we said, Dexter drawing the highest rate over the last 5 seasons at just over about a 70%. But Simmons isn't that far behind. He's been double teamed on about 66% of snaps. So it's just no question that these are two of the best interior linemen. It's what's Dexter going to be warranting for that next kind of extension, and when those talks start to resurface again, which I would imagine would be after this season.
Yeah, and I think he took that deal with that idea. Guess what? Great. Go be the best defensive tackle in football and be a game wrecker and be challenging Joe Burrow for Super Bowl MVP. Go do it. I think they would love a world where they're like, we probably should pay him $36 million a year. Like, in the sense that means he's so dominant, matters so much for the defense, the impact is felt that much, and they're that good. Like, a lot of things have to go right for Dexter to be able to renegotiate his deal. But guess what? I hope it happens. And if it happens, the Bengals are going to be a really good football team. And so part of the 10th pick and giving up the 10th pick is what you get in return. Like, the Titans wouldn't have taken the 10th pick for Jeffery Simmons. And let's say they did. Well, he wasn't going to take a 1-year, $28 million extension.
Right.
And so the value in that and getting to a point where you recognize that, because that was obviously a factor during this, getting this trade done, was agreeing to compensation, then the Bengals talking with the Lawrence's reps, talking with the Giants to get permission, but then Lawrence's reps to make sure they were close on a framework before the deal was completed. Huge. I mean, I was already at like an A+, and now it's like an A++, because you're giving them high-end money. I don't want to downplay it. But it isn't like market resetting money, and there's going to be other defensive tackles that ultimately get paid, including that guy in Philly.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to continue to look better throughout the offseason if more extensions come down.
Jalen Carter, to be clear.
Right.
I set you up. I thought you were going to be like,
We're going to talk about Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter's dominant. He's great. And he'll reset that market for sure, I think, at his age. But Dexter Lawrence's trade will just continue to get better. And a talking point that happened nationally, I feel like, when Dexter got traded to the Bengals, that didn't happen with the extension for Jeffery Simmons at all, was a conversation about age. They're both 28 years old. They've both been performing at a high level for multiple years. I've not heard one person bring up Jeffery Simmons' age when talking about this extension in Tennessee. It was almost all I heard about for a week when Dexter Lawrence got traded here from people outside of Cincinnati. So I don't really know what the difference is there. Maybe it's Lawrence's elbow and people are concerned with the injury, but I don't think the production really leads you to believe that that's going to be a huge problem. So the difference in the way these two have been viewed with very, very similar players has really been shocking for me throughout the league.
Yeah, and maybe the age was brought up more with Dexter, just given that he's going to the Bengals, and we know how the Bengals are when players hit the 3-0 number. We've seen it time and time again. So, yeah, that could be a factor. Maybe that was a point. But no, to what you were saying, it's just their production speaks for itself. And I get it. Dexter Lawrence had the 2025 that he did, but we've talked about it last week on the show where his energy and just the way he has, been participating in the offseason program, what we've seen out of him on the field, in the locker room, it's different. It's like he's almost like been rejuvenated. And yeah, I didn't know him when he was obviously a Giant and in New York, but it just seems like things are trending a little differently now that he's here in Cincinnati.
There's no doubt about it. And so now he's passed the character test, the teammate test, the hanging out with Joe Burrow and eating tacos, all those things. Now he's got to go out there and be dominant. And if he is, then this is going to be a home run trade. And it is that simple because the value's there, the contract's there, the compensation, while it was a lot, it makes sense. Now that last part. And we'll see if he can check that box, certainly, for this Bengals team and this Bengals defense that is really built and centered around him. And we'll have plenty more time to work on our sexy Dexy and make sure we talk about Dexter Lawrence.